Good morning, everyone. This is Larry Snow, co-chair of the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority, beginning our official meeting a little bit late. We're starting late, some extent because of weather, allowing time for more members of the board to be able to join us, hopefully in person, and that they're traveling safe, and also gathering a few more virtually. So, Representative Jordan Tusher, who is the other co-chair, is going to be a little bit late, travel-related coming in, but he'll be joining us shortly. So with that, we're going to get underway, and for any item that requires a quorum, if we don't have a quorum at that point, we'll return to that item for action if necessary. During our last meeting, we announced the selection of Michael Ombre as our executive director of the State Land Authority. Michael is here on my left, and we congratulate him again and tell him that we're excited about his leadership moving us forward. We also welcomed a new board member, USHE Associate Commissioner Jefferson Moss, who was sworn in, and he is replacing Commissioner Landward and from the USHE office. Speaking of Commissioner Landward, we would like to take a moment and to recognize Commissioner Jeff Landward. So Jeff is here. Jeff, would you mind joining us up here on the dais? We have a little something for you. Commissioner Landward, or Jeff, has been on the board almost from day one, I believe. Is that correct? How many years?
No, not that long.
Well, long enough.
Yeah.
Long enough. And has made an important contribution. One of the most important, I think, and unique aspects of the board's work is the intersection between what we're doing in terms of the project development, but also making sure that higher ed is included. And Jeff, you've been an important part of that. So we have a little something here recognizing you. It says, this is a little desk plaque. In recognition of your dedicated service, Commissioner Jeffrey Landward, Point of the Mountain State Land Authority board member from 2023 to 2024. Still long enough, as I said. This sandstone was preserved from the state prison entrance in Draper, Utah. It is repurposed from the original walls of the Utah Territorial Penitentiary in Sugar House. So that's appropriate recognition. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for
Can
this.
we join with me? No, nope at all. Should we have him back up here? Oh, down here? Okay. Wow. So join us, Andy. The next item on our agenda is the space for public comment. Members of the public have an opportunity to share comments relative to the point. The point is a public project. As a board, we have a responsibility to ensure this project reflects public values and provides broad public benefits. We do value input from the residents. In fact, over 17,000 Utah residents have already shared their priorities and ideas, and their feedback has helped guide the direction and the planning of the point. So we welcome your comments. Is there anyone here in the audience? I don't see anyone here that would like to make comment. Is there anyone indicating online? No. So we will move forward. But before I go to the next item on the agenda, special welcome to Andy Marr, is the commissioner seated to my right here who replaces Michael as our new commissioner from DFCM. And you're the executive director there too?
I'm the interim director.
Interim director.
Period where they're conducting a large choose what's your large.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll have you here sitting there as interim director, but that may change when we get a director. So I suspect that that we will recognize you as ex officio until that time, if that's okay. But we're really fortunate to have you here, and we appreciate you being able to provide input and help us as we make decisions related to your work in that division.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So now moving on to number 4, do we now have a quorum? How many Kimberly members do we have? We have Senator Fillmore and April. Pardon?
Tusher's on now too, so now I
Tusher,
think we
okay.
do.
Okay, I think we have now a quorum. We can take action on the minutes of our October 8th meeting. Board will consider approving the minutes of the October board meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Representative Moss.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Motion's made to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by, I don't think you can.
I will.
All right, seconded by Jerry, Senator Stevenson. Motion to approve the minutes of October 18th has been moved and seconded, October 8th, 2024. All those that can approve that motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. So Don, let's have you step up to the chair there so you can make your presentation. Don Willey, our Director of Operations. We recognize the trust placed by the public in our staff to ensure that the Land Authority funds are appropriate and spent in a manner consistent with approved budget. As always, we appreciate the work of our Finance Committee made up of April Cooper and Mike Ombre in reviewing our financial statements and also helping to prepare the budget. And we also appreciate very much Don for his work. We're going to turn some time now to Don to share the October financials, and thereafter we'll ask April Cooper and Mike if they feel free to make any comments. So I believe your mic is on, Don. We'll just have you go forward.
Great. Thank you, Chair Snow. Appreciate the time to be able to review our budget. It's been a little bit, a few months since we've been able to report on this just from time constraints previously. And so again, since adopting our new budget, as a refresher, as we give these reports, we look at the burn rate primarily to see if we're on track and any justifications for not being on that track. At this point, we should have utilized, we should have 67% of our budget remaining. So we're 4 months into the fiscal year. And as you look down on the far right column, you can see that we are doing extremely well with our budget. We have been prudent with our expenditures. We do have a few lines where we have burned a little bit higher than normal. And those are primarily due to some unexpected expenses when we budgeted. However, will equal out over the course of the fiscal year. So we still are confident we'll come in easily under budget on these budget lines. I'll just point those out. The first is 6131 advertising and legal publications. That included a nationwide release when we announced the executive director position opening to conduct a nationwide search. And so we spend a significant portion of that budget to be able to promote that and get applications nationwide for consideration for that position. Again, we anticipate that that will equalize over the course of the fiscal year, so we're not concerned about that. The second one is just on data processing charges. This is through Department of Technology Services, and it's simply onboarding technology with Mike coming on board as well. So again, some early expenses that we incur, but those will equal out over the course of the fiscal year. Other than that, the budget's looking great, on track. Again, we're burning low in most of the categories, so we're confident as we move forward with our future expenditures. That I'll give it to the Finance Committee for any additional comments.
Thank you, Don. April, I know that you were online. Any comments? Oh, you just walked in. Perfect timing. Before we go to you, April, Michael, any comments you'd like to make as a member of that committee? Okay. April, any comments from you? No comment. Thank you. And we're glad you made it here safe, both you and Jordan as well. So I have a question, Don. Am I reading this right, that at this point, we have 67% remaining. Of course, that's our budget year, runs from July 1 to, okay, so that makes sense.
Correct.
I was thinking, man, if that's to the end of this year, we're doing extremely well.
That would be wonderful,
Okay.
right?
All right. Well, even so, it looks to me like we're doing extremely well. Thanks for keeping an eye on that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your good work.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we'll go on to the next matter. Number 6, updated subcampus development review policy. Don, who is our Director of Operations, you all remember that in November 2023, the Land Authority Board approved a subcampus development review policy to align with the signed disposition and development agreement. Over the last year, staff have identified several recommended changes that we will consider. We will recognize Don to review those proposed updates, and we encourage board discussion, and then we'll look at entertaining a motion with respect to those changes. So Don, we'll turn the time to you on this issue as well.
Thank you, Chair Snow. We have some minor modifications here for consideration. As the chairman mentioned, over the last year, we've learned some lessons after signing our disposition and development agreement. And at the same time, simultaneously, the board approving a subcampus process have identified some areas where we can tighten things up and make the process a little more streamlined as we work with our development partner. So just as a recap of this process, the reason why we have this in place is we recognize that in addition to what occurs within phase 1, we will have other opportunities that are presented to us for development. And those opportunities run a wide range. We've already had several submittals that have come in to us, and some have moved forward, some have not, based on this process. But it allows us a process to be able to weigh our options and determine if it's something that would be a useful addition to the point and a best use of the land that we have stewardship over. In going through this process with both third-party submittals that would come outside of that relationship with the point partners, and then also working with the point partners directly, we recognize that the same process for both doesn't make sense. We work so closely with our development partners. We're in contact with them on a daily basis sometimes. And so those conversations, we didn't feel like necessarily warranted the four-step process that we had previously. What we're recommending is that four-step process in review and then moving on to studies, that remains the same for any third-party submittals that would come outside of the point partners. But when we're working directly on a submittal with the point partners, that we streamline this process. So we're essentially taking the 4 steps and collapsing it down to 2 steps. The review process, consideration, working with them, responding with any additional questions would be the second, and then coming to the board for consideration of that subcampus for approval. So again, just streamlining the process, being able to move quicker. We're not saying that we're exempting any of the information we're requiring. In fact, some areas we're asking for more information to be able to move the process quicker. But we have worked with the point partners and they are in agreement with this proposed outline here. Again, we're just simplifying the process here. So we're front loading with some of the studies, economic analysis, that moves up sooner in our request. So they would give it to us up front as opposed to just moving that down to step 3, which is what it would look like for a third party submittal. So again, now giving kind of bifurcating, giving 2 different processes, one that would be for a third party submittal, this adopting, and that would remain the same, this adopting a new streamlined process that just simplifies it for our relationship with the point partners.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to ask board members, any questions about this proposed revision to the subcampus proposal review with our point partners in this case and potentially future partners, right? Questions on board? Okay, I've got a couple, but maybe this will generate some more. So I think what you're saying, just to review, this does not change our process with respect to a third party. And so someone that comes forward or an entity that comes forward with a proposal for a subcampus outside of the boundaries of currently of the point partners development, we would still go through the 4 steps. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm guessing or believing that one of the reasons we're streamlining it is because some of the work, because of our relationship with the point partners and some of the intensive development review that we've already undertaken, there's no sense in duplicating some of that.
Correct.
Is that right? But in any event, both stages, if we reduce this to 2 phases, still requires board action on both.
That's correct.
It will require good work on behalf of staff, you and other members of the staff, to make sure that we have everything in place since we're shortening the process. And you're confident that Mike and your staff, that we can get that accomplished.
Absolutely, yeah. On through this process and with TPP, so I'm very familiar.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Can I make a comment?
Sure. But I think your mic's on, Centers.
As we've worked through other agencies in the state of Utah with development and the things that have gone on there, we found that, first of all, to get things done quickly is important. We're able to eliminate, if we're able to eliminate some steps, it seems like we get these projects put together very quickly. And I don't think that makes a lot of difference whether we're looking at what we do at the port, or not the point, or what we do at the inland port. I think it's the same thing. We've got ports now strung around the state of Utah, but expediency is important because a lot of people have, they think that that we plan things to death sometimes, rather than go to work and get them built. Probably the best example we have of getting things done quickly and working through the right process is, I believe it's MIDA. And you look at the project that's going on up west of Jordanelle right now. You look at all the development or all the processes going on west of Hill Air Force Base. And I believe expediency is absolutely important. Now, that certainly leaves room for mistakes, but the reason for some of these the organizations like this one being structured is so that we could get from point A to point B very quickly and not waste our time spinning our wheels, so to speak. So I think this is really important, and I believe it's a great process we need to move forward on as quick as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that comment. Other comments or any questions for Don? Chair would entertain a motion. The motion would be to approve this new updated sub-campus development policy.
I would move campus development policy that we have before us, just because it seems to make so much sense, and it's going to get things done quickly.
Thank you, Senator. Do I have a second of that motion? Thank you, April. It's been moved and seconded that we, as a board, approve the updated sub-campus development review policy. That policy is in your materials and has been presented to us today by Don. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any request to comment. I'll place that motion for a vote. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. Number 7. The board will now receive an update on the Innovation District. As background, central to the success of the overall vision of the Point is the Innovation District, which is led by Associate U.S. USHE Commissioner Jefferson Moss and his team. And I would also add, as title representative, Jefferson Moss. We will hear a presentation now from Commissioner Moss on the progress of the Innovation District and the central hub of that district, the Convergence Hall. So we'll turn the time to you, Jefferson. I think your mic is on.
And I was just going to say, we're going to have Tori provide that update. So
Okay.
thank you.
So can you introduce Tori to us, please?
I would be happy to. So Tori has been working with me for about 2 years and has been pretty much from the ground up been involved in a lot of the work that we're doing. She plays a very important role in coordinating efforts with TPP, has meetings regularly, as well as with our everything that we're doing on Convergence Hall. So she leads a lot of that effort. So she's really our project specialist, and maybe while they're still getting it ready. Great background. I actually had an opportunity to work with her at UVU, where she was one of our most amazing students. She was a presidential intern, foundation ambassador. I had to work with her in a number of different capacities. And after she graduated, I tracked her down and said, hey, I have this project I'd love your help on. And thankfully, she agreed somehow, and she's just been an incredible asset to the team. With that, I'll turn it over to Tori.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Tori, welcome.
Trying to share my screen, so just 1 second.
Okay. You might, I don't know whether you can pull that mic a little bit closer or not. But
Can you hear me? Does
yeah,
that work?
that's better.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you, Jeff, for that introduction, and appreciate the opportunity to present on the work that we've been doing at the Innovation District. And so we just kind of wanted to go over a recap of what the purpose of USHE and the involvement that we have for the Innovation District and what we are trying to achieve as the overall goal. And we really love this quote about creating a bottom-up horizontal innovation model that involves business, academic, and our civic institutions, government, and policy workers. So really creating an innovation district that brings all of those ideas and concepts together. And kind of from the beginning of this, Jeff really had an awesome opportunity to go around and visit a lot of innovation districts, and us as a team kind of over the past couple of years have been able to learn from the pros and cons of other successful and possibly unsuccessful innovation districts of what not to do. And so as we've kind of guided our team, these are the key pieces that we stay focused to, and specifically around proximity to industry clusters, helping create something that's vibrant and attractive, focusing on collaborative efforts. And that's a key part of all of this. Placemaking, making sure that we have effective funding mechanisms for new ideas and commercialization startups, and must be willing to invest in the innovation and growth of these ecosystems. So again, these are global visits that we've done to Singapore, Ireland, and a variety of ones. And most recently, we had the opportunity to go out to San Francisco and learned specifically around we need strategic space design. We have to have programming and community support for our companies to be able to have that sustainability long term. We need resource efficiency and focusing a lot on commercialization and startups. So commercialization, really pulling the technologies out of our universities that have good market compatibility and product market fit. And so just a couple more takeaways just from other innovation districts where we've learned is we really need to have these strategic partnerships. And that's something that as we are continuing to grow and working with our developers and otherwise, we're working on figuring out where and what companies need to be there and how do we help these companies be successful. So again, research integration, which we'll kind of talk about later on, of how we are really pulling the awesome research that's happening at our universities out into the market and to help them support with funding, with partnerships, with students, et cetera. And so how do we kind of transfer this knowledge and get those kind of collaborative efforts together of industry and education? And well as Jerry and Jeff had the opportunity to have a very deep dive immersive into Station F in France. And it's kind of the top tier model that we have seen kind of comparatively of what our goal is for. And so they have a really awesome setup of working with industry. They have a Google, they have Microsoft there where they provide a lot of the programming, and they've been able to kind of understand that model. So they were able to have a 2-day all in-depth opportunity to kind of understand how do they succeed in this model and how do they help their companies and how do they get these spaces to have just really significant programming to create partnerships in the space, but also outside of the space. And so part of that, which leads to is Convergence Hall, an update there. We have completed the architect interviews and have selected an architect, and which of FFKR and Gensler, and we're really excited to go with them. Even from our team last week, they had the opportunity to visit their offices in San Francisco, and they're like, yeah, we picked the right team that has the really innovative mindset that we're looking for when it comes to a building that realistically has never been built before. And so we started off with our programming and workshops, as you can kind of see from the pictures, and continuing now with stakeholder engagements with all of those around the Utah ecosystem. So we just kind of wanted to show some of the current renderings. Also, these are, disclaimer, these are the current renderings, not the cemented renderings. And so this is what we're really looking for, of having this kind of building that feels humane, but also just so innovative and so collaborative and working through all of that. Focusing on, we have a residential space. So there is going to be a student housing component of people and students that are looking to start companies, but will need that access to resource in this live, work, play environment. Incubator workspace, and thinking more about how do we get these people to bump into each other and share ideas from all different ways, and how do we kind of get those 3 different groups, higher education, industry, and government, to kind of collectively come up and fix Utah's biggest problems here at Convergence Hall. Having this main space event, kind of think we're looking around the TEDx events, an Apple event, having the opportunity to have a good amount of people. And that's something that we've seen a lot as we've talked with the Utah ecosystem, is finding a space that is above 350. So that's kind of the goal that we're looking for our main event space, is to be around 500. And so that we can share and use with a lot of the different groups in our ecosystem from down south to up north. And so just some other renderings of kind of what we're looking at, as well as the facility types that we're starting to narrow down to, is focusing on AI lab, energy lab, corporate research, marketing spaces, secure spaces, prototyping. And so really these are kind of the facilities that we will have to be able to support the companies that are coming out of Convergence Hall, as well as those in the public. So again, kind of more of the space ideas that we're looking at is incubator and venture studios, having this co-working and accelerator space, lounge and networking, higher ed and corporate innovation. Again, kind of touching on the student housing will be a huge part of this that we're still figuring out and understanding kind of how does that work within the building. It's kind of a little bit of the programming building section that we're looking at. So kind of in these hive spaces, building off of the Utah Beehive, but just kind of having these little neighborhoods and workspaces, and how do you kind of get that combination and flow between the different types of the building. These are the partners that we've been working with specifically and have really successful relationships with, that want to engage fully within Convergence Hall, as well as within the ecosystem. And then more specifically, these are some of the partnership updates that we've been working on. As you can see, have a Station F MOU. They are out of France, working on with the Utah Stena Center, which is their FinTech center. They're helping spin out FinTech as well, just because Utah is such a hot place for the FinTech industry. And then working with the SBA and the SBDC for MOUs, and then working on Sandboxes, are a program that was started out of BYU that helps students, specifically was focusing on tech companies, but kind of they do some credits and were able to spin out companies. And now they've been able to go to other universities, and have seen a lot of students that have really been successful in starting these companies, because by the end of it, they have to have some sort of revenue after 3 or 4 months. And so it's been really unique to see. So we've been able to provide some funding for these programs to go to other schools and help other students. Just kind of wanted to let you know of where we are at in the process for specifically Convergence Hall. Right now, kind of like as we said earlier, the architect has been selected, and we're furthering our stakeholder engagement and finalizing the program in these next couple of months. So the Utah Innovation Fund, we wanted to talk just a little bit about one of the programs specifically that we have at Convergence Hall. The Utah Innovation Fund is a $30 million fund that invests in companies that come out of our institutions of higher education. This started in September of 2023. And it's been an awesome opportunity to help our schools really commercialize that technology and find what are the companies and what is the people that are willing and can get these kind of jobs done. So this is the updates that we've had from the past year. We've sourced to 96 different companies. Currently, we have 4 companies in initial screen, meaning kind of we're vetting, do they fit our criteria? And our criteria being, are they headquarters in Utah? Do they have a connection to an institution of higher education? And are they kind of in one of our 6 verticals, which is more of the deep tech space of advanced manufacturing, energy, life sciences, IT and software, and a couple others. And currently have some investment memos. We've invested in 12 companies, and of the $30 million, we've made 2.75 investments into those companies, averaging check size from 50 to 250K. We currently have 30 analysts that we can talk a little bit later more about that program. But this is a program that we have specifically about analysts from all across the state. And so we have the opportunity to have this remote due diligence calls with these analysts, where they help from the initial and screen all the way until presenting the investment memo to our investment committee. And so we really have this opportunity to get students this hands-on experience. And because we are part of the system, we really can go, we have students from all the way from USU to Utah Tech, and really have the opportunity for them to learn, as well as we have bi-monthly calls with people, significant people in the industry to get them this experience. And we've really seen them. We've had many students go on to Goldman, Bain, and a couple other VC funds across the state. And so we've really loved that, as well as a need that we found is we have a graduate student, so PhD students that are a part of our schools that have had an interest of, so if I don't go into academia, what else is there? And so we've had a huge variety of them that have come and have want to learn more about venture capital and using that more technical experience into these different companies. And so they've been some of our best analysts that are willing to do it all the time and just dig and dig and dig. And so it's been really unique to find students that want that opportunity that didn't know that existed compared to before. Just a couple of events that we wanted to highlight throughout the system. There was a Kiln Founders and Funders retreat this past year, and it was really amazing to get those groups of, we brought some of our own portfolio companies and we're able to show them and to connect them with other founders for future follow-on funding. And that's kind of the whole purpose of the Utah Innovation Fund, is to pull those companies out of our institutions and then connect them to future rounds of funding. And so having the opportunity with our students and then with our portfolio companies has been incredible. We hosted a AI summit just 2 weeks ago about policy, workforce, and what are the innovations happening in the industry. And we had around 300 people come to that event, and it was amazing to have the governor also give a keynote for this event. And these are the different groups that we partnered with and shared, and we were excited to be able to have that event and hope for it to be a yearly summit and one day at Convergence Hall. This is an event that's actually happening this Thursday. We have our team presenting about the life science initiatives and resources that we have as a state that will be around the Point Project. And so we have a panel as well as a booth at this event to really show that what we are doing around the life sciences here. And so many of out here are on this panel. So we're excited to hear from them for this. Focusing kind of, as we talked about commercialization and about the companies that we're sharing, as a system, we are providing the opportunity to help our schools understand how do we get these companies to market prior to them spending a lot of resources and realizing that there was no market fit. And so as a back office for the state, because a lot of our schools, besides some that are larger, don't have many people, if they have half a person that is able to provide this opportunity for their people. And so we are focusing on this as a shared service, and kind of I'll introduce, we have a new team member that is going to be focused around this business development for our universities, of identifying the right market, or identifying the right technology, giving updates, giving feedback. We're going to be providing training for professors and students about commercializing technologies, as well as about venture capital, working on business development such as pitch decks, how to talk to investors, especially for our professors that lack that kind of experience. We have our student analyst program, our graduate analysts, connecting people in the industry, as well as providing investments and space. And so this was the new hire we're talking about. Angela Smith came from industry. She actually was an educator for a couple of years and then went to BYU Business School and went into venture. So the typical route you would do in life. And so she has a unique experience of programming, as well as understanding how the venture capital experience is and what companies need to be successful to get further private investments. And so her roles will be helping on more of the programmatic side of that business development, of the training, of working with the students, of helping with those research reports and such, and kind of supporting the entrepreneurship programming that will happen at Convergence Hall. And lastly is our Utah Policy Innovation Lab, working specifically in helping with the San Rafael Energy Research Consortium. And so as you know, this previously was not a state development, but is now under the state, and with our universities are able to work together to add with experts in the field to focus on researching and pulling out cool technologies in energy systems, renewable energy, and environmental engineering. And so this is a consortium that we're helping with to really focus on what is the state leaning into in energy wise and how can we continue to support cool technologies that are going to help with the infrastructure of our state. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tori. You have packed a lot into just a few minutes, which is pretty amazing, pretty spectacular. And I'm probably only speaking for myself, but this is such a huge, and the scope is beyond a lot of what I can comprehend. But do I understand it correct that the Convergence Hall is only one part of all that you're all doing with the innovation effort? And maybe you could comment on that, and Jefferson, and then explain to us how Convergence Hall relates to all of this grand plan that you are undertaking in the state. Is that a fair question?
Yes. I think the biggest thing is Convergence Hall is a place, but what happens there and the activity that happens there is necessary and needs to start now and not once the building is built. But as we are really thinking about what we want to do and the purpose of that I think all of these different programs, the Utah Policy Innovation Lab, it's bringing together policymakers, researchers, and industry of how do we create effective policy that's providing for all the stakeholders involved. And so that's, again, Convergence Hall is convening those major three groups. Then we have the Utah Innovation Fund. Similar is how do we get these technologies from our universities and out into industry and connecting them to future private markets. Again, same concepts of education and industry collaborating together here at Convergence Hall. And so I think it really is what's the inside and what's the core of the building is what the things that we're working on now, as well as how do we develop this building? What does it need to be as we have these programs? What are the space needs now, but as well, what are the space needs going to be? How do we make this building flexible? So I think those are kind of the key elements of that. And I'll let Jeff add anything to that.
Yeah, just in terms of how does that tie into the rest of the development? Obviously, this is just a building, but the whole point is that you're really bringing a lot of things together. The startup state, the governor's startup state will be housed there. We've talked about Talent Ready Utah would love to have a physical location, all these things that a lot of our businesses, as we go out and talk to them, that's the type of thing that they're trying to connect into. How do I get in with a professor that I know has a certain technical expertise that we can work with on a project? Or how do I get a team of students to do this certain thing? Or to Tori's point, how do we help support our schools off the Wasatch Front that don't have these types of resources where they can come up and any university, any group of students in the state can be able to leverage that and really get plugged into all the activity that's happening there. So we hope that this is something that obviously one will benefit the whole project here at the Point, but we've been very aggressively looking and working with all of our schools off the Wasatch Front to say, how do we make sure that we're making that connection to you as well? And a lot of our schools, frankly, are getting more excited because they just haven't had some of those types of opportunities before.
And I'll bet that includes Utah Tech, speaking of schools.
We spend a lot of time at Utah Tech. We really love what they're doing down there. Yeah.
Other questions from board members? April, let me get your mic on. Is it lit?
Number 9. So thank you.
There you go.
Thanks for that presentation. That was great. We're really excited as a board. I think it's really nice that you guys are figuring out how to activate relationships, especially with all the different generations, when you'll see some generations that have been in VC a long time and then students coming out. So I think that's really good to have those relationships there. I think it looks like it's on track to be stimulating activity and some startups and things before the building even gets open. So I really support that we don't open a building and it's empty and then we're trying to figure out what to do in there, and that there's all this legwork for several years. So when it's open, it's just bustling and full. And I think that's what the public wants to see. So thank you for your efforts. You're definitely going in the right direction.
Thank you, April. Other comments or questions? I can't resist. I have a couple more. But, Jefferson, I know that you've been working with our Phase 1 partners, um, is it their view that this undertaking will assist them with their overall plan for the first phase?
Yeah, in fact, it's been really good. I think the last few months especially, we've really worked on a very coordinated effort on how to align the two elements of what they're doing and what we're doing. We've been able to create some great collateral. It's been nice that we've actually been able to, we're starting to hit some large potential tenants and being able to bring that shared conversation of here's how you tie into workforce, here's how you tie into innovation, and then here's this beautiful place that you can come and where would you like site locations. Being able to tie all of those together, we've seen a really great partnership there. So that's been really helpful. And I think they see the value of, you know, when they're trying to recruit companies, almost every company that comes to Utah, the first thing they ask is, well, what about workforce? You know, how do I tie into the universities? What about you know, where's the innovation coming? All of those things are some of the first things they ask about. So it's really nice for us to be able to come in and bring that to the people that they're talking to.
And actually have a place to show, talk
Yeah.
about, yeah. Just a technical question, when the building's completed, is ownership, management, control will be under USHE or some other state agency?
Yeah, the physical building will be owned by the state. The operating of the building would be under USHE.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much. Just another question, Tori, maybe for you. You've been involved in presenting this plan to private industry, right? And can you share with the board what the response has been with our local Utah companies with the focus on the Point and Convergence Hall?
A lot of them are really excited for the proximity that it has to that Silicon Slopes area and kind of the whole purpose and reason of the development, as well as Convergence Hall being a place where a lot of people can have the opportunity to exist. Kind of just hitting on the same point that Jeff just made about the workforce. So having that, like you said, that generational, you have your young students that are hungry, that want to learn, as well as you have your people that have exited companies that want to give back and be in a space where normally there's not really a physical location where those groups could exist cohesively, as well as have the opportunity to intermittently mix. And so I think a lot of them have been excited to have those various connections be housed in one space, and through really successful programming of events and co-working spaces and labs and such, those opportunities will be able to combine together. And I think that's what a lot of people are really excited about, is to have that kind of not just your tech people and not just your policymakers, but having that mix of different groups. And so that's a lot of what we've heard from the ecosystem, is a space for public and private to be able to combine together.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tori, and it's easy to see why our friend Jefferson Moss is happy to work with you with your expertise and your support. It's clear. So thank you for being here today. Next item on the agenda is item number 8, our executive director's report from our new director, but really not all that new to us, Michael Ombre. He will invite we invite him to provide us an update on the Point's progress. So,
Thank you, Lowry.
There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Co-Chair. First of all, I'd just like to say I feel privileged to give my first report as the director. It reminds me, about 10 years ago, I was in a meeting and we were starting a very large project, and the CEO of Big D, Rob Moore, came up to me and he said, "These projects are successful when you go slow to go fast." Over the past 5 years, that's what Alan and his team has done, right? Through the planning efforts, through the backbone infrastructure design and engineering. And we finally have come to the point where we have bid out our first package of Porter Rockwell Boulevard. We're very excited to announce that. We're hoping for a groundbreaking ceremony on December 17th. But it's just the first of many packages to come. So there'll be a lot more activity on the ground, and it's almost time to go fast. So with that, let me give you an update. As I mentioned, we bought out our first package, Porter Rockwell Boulevard. We have another large infrastructure package coming out middle of November, hopefully to bid before the first of the year. And then we have a few more bid packages after that, the water tank and the landscaping package. So there'll be a lot of activity on site. We've also partnered with our development team, and we've created a design review committee with our staff. We've reviewed the promenade and their first building. Right now, it's technically called H5A. It's a high-density residential unit. And we're making great progress doing that as well. We're also reviewing several sub-campus proposals, so there's some opportunity and excitement with that as well. We continue to do various studies with advanced air mobility, with a for-sale housing product potentially, and our public art. So there's a lot of momentum. We meet with Draper City and Salt Lake County and the school district very often. So again, there's a lot of momentum.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for our director? Not seeing any. Thanks for that and for your leadership. Next item on our agenda is to discuss the Open and Public Meetings Act training. We will turn the time to our legal counsel, J.C. Skinner. This is an annual event, J.C. We appreciate you always updating us, and I know it's an area sometimes that changes. So thank you for being here today and for your presentation.
It is my pleasure. I know you've all been waiting just for this part of the meeting.
Yes.
So excitedly. I'll just note, I think everyone on this board probably receives this training in a number of different arenas. So this particular training is tailored for this board. It does cover all the things that we need to, but there are a few things that I wanted to make sure we covered specifically for this board. Is this working, the projection of the project? Okay, fantastic, thank you. I think as you all know, the Open Public Meetings Act, often called OPMA from Utah, it's found in Utah Code Section 5241. This is a general government section that provides a lot of these different kinds of items. But I think it's important to know that it specifically states the topic or the purpose of this particular code section. And it's to make sure that public bodies take actions openly and conduct deliberations openly. I think this body should be commended, and I've been really impressed with the way that you have all very deliberately made sure to do that, right? To make sure that all of your meetings are open, that you take ample time and provide every opportunity for public feedback. That is the purpose of this act, to help facilitate that. Specifically, it defines a public body. For this group, the thing that you need to know is you are a public body, but some of your subcommittees and other things are not. So a public body is an administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative body that is created by the Constitution, state statute, rule, ordinance, or resolution. That's one thing to keep in mind when you're asking with some of our subgroups or working groups, is this created in code? Does it expend, disperse, or support, or it's supported by tax revenue? And is it vested with the authority to make decisions regarding public business? So if there's ever a question as to whether something falls under it, it's often, best to operate as a public body, but these are the things that qualify it as such. So if you don't have a quorum present, or it's a subcommittee that is not one that's created by our code, and they're not expending money, right? They're doing things particularly to advise this group. Those don't qualify as public meetings and can be operated in a different way. And we'll get into the things why that matters. So specifically, a meeting is the convening of the public body with a quorum present. So this includes a workshop or an executive session. If there is a quorum present of this board, that is considered a meeting. That means that we're going to have to do the things that we're going to talk about here in a minute. It does not include a chance gathering or a social meeting, or a social gathering. So, if you all end up at the same Christmas party together, that is not going to qualify as a meeting, although you should avoid huddling in the corner and making decisions for the board. I will note that. the reason that these things matter is public meetings have to be, you have to give notice to the public, right? That there is a meeting taking place. So that does require at least 24 hours before the meeting to specify the date, time, and place of the meeting. Those notices should be published on the Utah Public Meeting website with the location of the meeting, and that actually qualifies for the notice with newspapers as well. This is something you should thank CC Niederhauser, who does all of this for you. She makes sure that these things are all well posted. They are posted on both your website and the public meeting website if you're ever looking for these things. I think we have a mailing list that we send it out to as well. That agenda that has to be posted within 24 hours needs to include specific topics the body will consider and take action on. So these are questions that come up a lot. Those meeting items have to be described with reasonable specificity so that the general member of the public, when looking at that agenda, would know what you're talking about. Right? So it's not disguised, it's not trying to hide what you're talking about. It with general specificity will let them know what they're talking about. You can talk about something that's not specifically on the agenda, but you can't take any final action on it, right? You just can't vote on something that is not on the agenda. So if you had not put recognizing Jeff on the agenda, that's fine. That doesn't require a vote of the body. You can do those kinds of administrative things. In order to conduct the meeting, you can have a meeting with any number of members present. You just can't necessarily do anything. In order to vote or take any specific action, you must have a quorum. I know we've had some questions about this, so I added this definition here specifically. The Utah Code defines a quorum as a simple majority of the membership of a public body, unless otherwise defined. This particular body has not otherwise defined, and we don't have any more refining definition in code. A number of state groups do have a more specific definition there, or they will further define in bylaws, and that's something that we are looking at for you all. A public body also, and you all do this, it holds regular meetings that are scheduled in advance over the course of a year. Once a year, you should provide a general schedule of when those meetings will be so people can plan accordingly. I know you do that for the board members as well so that you can plan to be there.
Excuse me, Jason.
Yes, of
Before you
course.
go on to this slide, do we have the ability to self-define a quorum, or is that a statutory requirement?
So again, this is the language, I took it directly from code. It says, unless otherwise defined. There are a number of entities that do define these in their bylaws, and you do have the authority to do bylaws. So I have always interpreted this to be, it can be further defined by bylaws. We also have the ability to work with our legislature if you wanted to define that further in code, if that was something that provided a little bit more certainty, is also something you can do.
Thanks, Jason.
Of course. And I should say, please interrupt me with questions at any point in time. Specific to closing a meeting, and this group is one that does that rather frequently. We have those closed meetings. The reasons and the opportunities to close a meeting are specifically defined in statute. It is important to note that those, when you have that closed meeting, that you stick to those topics for which you close the meeting. You must, and you all remember this, you always do a motion to close into that closed meeting, and you are required to provide the reason for which you are going into that closed meeting. That becomes important because there are a couple of topics, particularly things like personnel discussions, right? Where you're talking about the competency of an individual, their competency or health or character, that you don't record. So it's important that you stick very specifically to those topics. And the chair of your board is required to sign an affidavit saying, we only talked about this, and that's why it's not recorded. We'll talk a little bit about recordings here in a minute, but some of the reasons, the general reasons that people would close a meeting would be to talk about personnel, character, competence, health, pending or imminent litigation, so we can update you on things that may be happening. Procurement-related issues, specifically to make sure that you're protecting the ability of this body to remain competitive or to get the best, to make the best deal on behalf of the state. Trade secrets, particularly for this group that is defined as a public nonprofit. There's a specific provision for you to talk about trade secrets and things, again, that would impact your competitive advantages, specifically with procurements as well. Security, personnel devices, investigations of alleged criminal conduct. And then very specifically to Pomslet, there is a section in the code that talks about strategy sessions to discuss the purpose, exchange, lease of real property, including water rights or anything along those lines. You all may recall over the last couple of years, we have actually worked with the legislature to make a couple of small changes to this section, and these are are italicized here, but we do specifically provide for you to be able to discuss proposed development agreements, project proposals for sub-campuses or independent projects, or financing proposals related to the development of land owned by the state. Again, that was something that was contemplated that you all need, again, for those same reasons of protecting the competitive advantage or trade secrets or those kinds of things, to make sure that we are working in the way that will operate with the best return for the state. And then if those discussions would disclose the appraisal or estimated value of property or prevent the public body from completing the transaction in the best possible terms. Any questions about that? Okay. Specifically how to close a meeting, you can close a meeting with 2/3 of the vote of the quorum present. So again, you need to have a quorum present. 2/3 of the entity has to vote for that. And you do need to record those by name. So whether you take a roll call vote, which a lot of entities do, or specifically record in the minutes who voted for or against. This one's kind of a different vote. It has a special requirement because it is that closed meeting related item. You are required to announce on the meeting the reason the meeting is going to be closed. And then in the closed meeting, the only vote that you can take is to reopen the meeting. There can be no other official vote or action taken in that body or in that meeting. You must vote in an open meeting for anything that you discussed in the closed meeting if you're actually trying to approve something or ratify anything. Also should note, discussions from closed meetings should be kept confidential. Those are executive sessions. Those are under a confidentiality provision. And so just keep that in mind. What you discuss there should stay confidential. And then a recording of a closed meeting is made with those exceptions, with a couple of exceptions. A recording is typically kept private. It's not posted on your website like everything else is, but it could be ordered by a court to be turned over for some specific reason, or could be examined by the court, particularly if someone questions whether or not what you were discussing in that closed meeting was actually germane to why you closed the meeting. Or one of the more specific reasons you see it, if it's related to procurements and someone is challenging that procurement and there are questions about whether or not there were unlawful or unfair types of things that took place in that conversation. Those are some of the reasons the court could order to release that closed meeting recording. As you all note, and you approve these regularly, a public body must keep written minutes and a recording, both. Unless it's something that's on site. So if you were to go to take a tour of the prison, you aren't required to record that meeting, but you do have to have a recitation in minutes of it. Those minutes must be made available to the public within 30 days. The recording has to be available within 3 days. And then you must have to make those approved minutes available within 3 days after they're approved. I'll also note in relation to electronic meetings, Senator Stevenson, I think this is a change you made to the code. But as you all recall, through 2020, there suddenly became a real need across the state to hold closed meetings electronically. The code was changed to allow a number of public bodies to do that by passing a resolution allowing them to, or with specific reason. Interestingly, for the point specifically, you all have an exemption in code that allows you to hold a public meeting without passing a further resolution to hold that remotely. So you can and do that. In relation to that, I'll just note, most public bodies, and you all do this, will hold what we would call this as an anchor location where the public can come if they want to. They're not required to, but they can. Or you provide that link to the remote meeting where people can join and provide comment or listen to the meeting if they so desire. Finally, emergency meetings. I think we have done this maybe once or twice for this board. A public body may hold an emergency meeting and which is when you don't give 24 hours notice. Something comes up that you have to deal with immediately. If the unforeseen circumstances that require them, to come up, it just doesn't, it's urgent, it doesn't give you the time to notice it otherwise. In that instance, the board must make every effort possible to reach all of you, to get your approval to call that executive meeting, and then you have to provide public notice just as quickly as possible to the public to do that. But that can be done, again, within that 24-hour window. And then any action that you all take in violation of the Public Meetings Act. So if any of these rules are violated for whatever reason, actually can be voided by the court. There are provisions to come back and cure it. So you could come back and retake a vote with the quorum present or with a recording or in an open meeting or something along those lines. I will just note it is a Class B misdemeanor to knowingly and intentionally violate a closed meeting provision of the Open Public Meeting Act. So just keep that in mind. There are errors that take place sometimes, in some bodies, some people they forget to hit the record button, right? That wasn't intentional. There are ways to try to go back and cure that. But again, this knowing and intentional violation is what results in a potential criminal violation. And then I just wanted to touch very briefly on the Government Records Management Act. Grandma, as you all know it, you're all very familiar with this. Just to note that this board is, as a public body, subject to the Government Records Management Act. That means that the records of this entity are considered as a default public records. There are exceptions to that, but that's where it is. So just keep in mind, a record under this definition means a book record, letter, document, paper, map, plan, photograph, film, map, tape, recording, electronic data. Text messages is not specifically listed there, but that falls under the electronic data kind of areas. Documentary material, again, note here, it's regardless of physical form or characteristic, that is prepared, owned, received, or retained by a governmental entity or political subdivision. So anything that comes to you or that you send out, where all of the information is original, in its original form is reproducible or photocopyable. That's not really a word, by a mechanic or other means, right? So it's something that can be reproduced to be provided to the requester. I'll just note there are several classifications. You should consider as a kind of a default, most documents are considered public. The other classifications are private. Private documents usually contain personal information is the way I would think about it. So people's dates of birth, their employment records, driver's license record, social security numbers, things like that, right? Government entities have to get those. Those are private records. Controlled records are things that are pretty specifically dealing with an individual's mental health. That's a pretty limited category, not something that we deal with here on this board very much. But protected records are something that you all deal with a lot. So protected records can be things like business confidential information, attorney-client privilege communications, as we've talked about, trade secret type information, right? These kinds of things along those lines, drafts of documents until they're prepared and ready to be final can be considered protected documents. So just note, a person has the right to inspect public records. Most things, again, as a default, are considered that free of charge. Don serves as your government records. What's the phrase? Officer, government records officer for the point. And we will work with those. We have a lot, often they're very legally sensitive issues. So again, just they're public unless they're not, which is when they fit under one of these categories. I will just note for this board, keep in mind, right, that does include your communications. It includes your emails whenever you're talking about point business. It does include your text messages when you're talking about point business, all of those kinds of things. Voicemails can also fall into that category. So if you are talking about something that is sensitive or something that, may be a deal that we're working on confidentially, make sure that you're just careful with those communications and how you handle those. Also, just what makes something a record, it is the content, it's not the format. So again, it's a board communication on a private device or a private email account can still be considered a government record. So just something to keep in mind. Penalties for this, again, the legislature has determined some pretty serious penalties for violation of this. So again, a public employee or other person who has lawful access to any of these records and or improperly uses one of these records is again subject to a Class B misdemeanor. This can mean part of this, by the way, who improperly uses. We've seen this in a couple of different instances where someone has something that is protected or controlled for a specific reason, and knowing that releases it anyway, right, or shares that information anyway. It can also be knowing that you have that information, and when there's a request that comes for it, refusing to turn it over, or, you know, if we call you to say, do you have these documents, and not turning something over. So just keep that in mind. Public employee who intentionally refuses to release the record, again, is also guilty of a Class B misdemeanor. I know that's a really exciting end to that, but I do think it is important. In these entities, sometimes we become a little bit casual in the way we handle some of this information. We're working with a lot of other government partners. A lot of sensitive information goes back and forth. I will note we work very closely with our development partner and our other government partners to make sure that we classify things properly as they're going back and forth. We just want to make sure the board is aware of those dynamics as well. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board? Great presentation, great reminder. JC, I believe with respect to public record that, and maybe Senator Stevenson or co-chair would come in, apparently there is now an exception with respect to calendars, Cap?
Yes, I believe those are for elected officials specifically related to their calendars. I'll go back and double check that for you. Historically, it has been personal calendars have been exempt from becoming public or not considered public records, but official calendars have been. The legislature recently made that change specific to those calendars, and I do believe it is for officials, but I'll double check that for you.
Thank you.
I don't know, Representative Tusher, do you know that one off the top of your head? Okay. Yeah, again, if it's personal calendars, so there's an exception specifically for personal calendars or personal notes otherwise. You know, Director Ambre, if you're taking notes during a meeting and they're for your use only, they're not official notes, those are not public records. Those are actually not considered records. Personal calendars fall in that same category.
Thank you. I think Senator Stevenson may have a question.
Just a comment. I think over the past 40 plus years, I probably had this training. I can't tell you how many times, but this is the best.
Oh. I'm sure you say that to all your trainers. Thank you.
This was worth braving the storm, you know,
Thank
the
you.
weather. So thank you, JC. And thank you also for all of your good legal counsel and direction. We appreciate that. All right. If there's nothing else, that brings us to the last item on the agenda. The chair would entertain a final motion for the meeting today. Senator Stevenson,
Motion to, what is it? What do we want to do next?
we're going to adjourn.
Adjourn, there we go.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Seconded by April. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here and attending both in person and online.
Hey, I just want you to know that when she said that she'd worked with Jefferson for 2 years, it will get better than that, I promise. I've worked with them a long time, and it's always getting better. Thank you.
I just want you to know, Senator, that's part of the public record, so.
That's okay.